Straight in, first try events. So wow. Both numbers are on. People are gonna make it anyways. So you don't have
it's much more impressive. He likes you.
how crazy. Wow.
Not
I feel for you. You all must be right. You just gotta see one of the They're gonna do it. Good ones too. I wanna learn, I wanna figure out. I don't wanna rock the mic, work on the task. Right now. Now you know, just start inside. Yes, I'm ready. I'll tell you what's inside if you want. Let's do this. It's fine, just sign it. Oh,
You know, it is.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here today. It is February 22nd. I will call to order the Larimer Regional Opioid Abatement Council February meeting to order. We have some guests in the room, and we've got quite an agenda here with some updates as well as some action items. So first, I will look to public comment. Is there anybody here or online that would like to make public comment to the council? Anyone online? All right, not seeing any. We will close public comment.
Actually, hey, Tom,
Yes,
this might be more pertinent to make a public comment, if I may.
sure.
Cool. This coming Thursday, or no, Wednesday, I'm sorry, of next week is Black and Blues Music and Brews here in Loveland. The Loveland Voice will be doing a community forum on addiction, recovery, and harm reduction. A couple speakers doing work in the community, as well as Eric Black, member of our council. So anyone who is interested, please join. It will also be recorded and I believe live streamed if you're not able to attend in person. You can find more information at the Loveland Voice website. So just search Loveland Voice.
Loveland Voices website. All right, we will get that in the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Moving to approval of the January 25, 2024 meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make that motion, sorry. Okay,
We have a
second.
motion and a second. Any further conversation? See, and welcome, Brian. Trustee Mason, I do believe you're online, correct?
Yes, sir. You got it.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Thanks for being here. All right, let's call it all those in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Those passed unanimously. All right, moving right along. We'll move to approval of our 2024 grant agreement template, approval reporting templates and fiscal change updates. Before I turn it over to Carol, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. John Voss, who is the accounting manager over at the health department. John takes care of all of our budgeting, finances, and customer service care. So John is going to help us out because as the ROAC has grown, so have the duties for Carol. In fact, Carol's time allocation in January is well over 40 hours working just on the ROAC. So that is quite a significant time commitment. So John is going to help out. So thank you, John. Welcome, John. But I will turn it over to Carol for item 4.
Okay. Yeah, to follow up with that, John and I are going to kind of tag team on this today. And the goal is eventually for John to take over the grant administration piece and I'll stick with the fiscal piece. And hopefully between the two of us, we can get everything done. And so I wanted to turn your attention to the 2024 grant agreement. And that's the one that has some yellow highlights on the first page. Yeah. So we have some new grantees this year for 2024, and we need a grant agreement with them. So I worked with David Arow to look at our 2023 agreement and see what changes we need to make. And so the reason this is here is for the council to approve it or make changes or whatever for our new grantees. I just wanted to point, this template is pretty much the same as what the Larimer County Behavioral Health Department uses with their grantees, just modified a little bit for this group. And that turned out to be pretty good because a lot of the grantees that you all are selecting also work with the Behavioral Health Department. So it's kind of familiar to them. So that's been an advantage. So a couple of things I wanted to point out. If you look at the middle of the first page under payment process, I worked with David to add some additional language. What we found last year, this group received all of its funding at the beginning of the year. By January, we had our $2 million. This year is a little bit different. For some reason, the funding is going to be trickling in over the year. And it's going to come from multiple sites. Some of it comes from the trustee, and then some of it comes from some other groups that the state is working with. So we can no longer depend on having all of our money up front. So we added some language that said we'll pay 50% up front and then 50% upon approval of the grantee's 6-month report, dependent upon the availability of funds. So obviously we can't pay it if we don't have it. And the state really can't tell us yet when those monies will be coming in. They seem to feel like they'll be coming in pretty soon. It's just this uncertainty right now that we're in. So we added that additional language. In addition, I know that some of the other ROACs have a different payment process. Some of them are paying the total amount up front, and some are paying on a reimbursement basis. So I just wanted to, lay that out there. The reimbursement basis, I think, is a good thing, but we simply don't have the staff to manage that, to deal with reimbursement requests every month and approve them and all of that. So that's why we went to this half and half last year. So I just want to make sure that there's still a level of comfort with that payment process. So that's one of the items on here. Have you, if I can just interject, have you heard from any of the grantees on how it's worked for them? I mean, I haven't heard any opposition, but I haven't heard any opposition.
Yeah, I occasionally ask folks, I've asked MJ about it, and I think Weld County is doing a reimbursement basis, and that seemed to work okay. And as far as I know, what we're doing, it has for that seems to work okay. I think it would be easiest to give all of the money up front, but then there's that stewardship role that this group has as well. So not sure how you feel about that.
Okay.
Another thing I wanted to change is the grant performance period. What we did last year was we just said it runs a year from when the document is executed. And that turned out to be a problem because sometimes the document would be executed like on the 23rd of a month, and running a grant period from like the 23rd to the 23rd doesn't fit in with the accounting process. So we're going to start these on like the first of a month and do it a year after that. just to not make our poor grantees crazy trying to figure out how to do these
So it'll just be
odd
the
months.
first of the month after it's signed.
Well, I wish David Aero was here because I kind of had a question about that. Since the council only meets monthly, it can be a while before everything gets approved and signed. So I don't know if we have to wait until it's, if it has to be the first day of the month after it's been signed, or if we can, sign a little bit after the grant period starts. I don't know if anyone has any insight on that.
It seemed like it would be, since we meet at least a few days during the month, and if we had these documents ready to go, unless there's some changes, that it might be a good, just to try to do it on that first of the month. I agree with you. I think it does get confusing when we have all these different dates, and I still wonder if we need to just kind of get these all in once we get this kind of in a pattern, get back to everyone being on the same, to make this easier on staff process, to have them all, this date or this date, these dates like March 1st or September 1st or something. It just seems like when we have these all staggered, like we got into, because we got started off on kind of a busy foot, that it would be great to just get them all kind of back in alignment sometime in the future here. I think that would make things easier as well.
Carol.
Yeah.
Oh, he is here.
He's on.
Yay.
Yeah, it's fun that my video's up, but you guys can't see it. So
We
I just
see you now. We see you now,
Okay.
David. Thank you.
So if you can clarify your question for me, because I heard it, but I'm trying to get a better grasp of exactly what the question is on when to have the grant start date or a different date.
Right, can the grant start before the document is fully signed? So let's say the document's fully signed on the 15th, but we want the grant to start on the 1st. Is that doable? Or do we have to wait until the next month?
You want to ask the attorney if we should be following documents we haven't totally signed yet? I would, yeah.
Maybe we don't want to ask you.
My initial advice is not to have a grant that goes into effect before the actual signatures, because we don't know if there would be changes. We don't know if we'll get information from the AG's office. There's just so many unknowns that I don't think we'd want to do that for. You can have it start at a different time and I'm not quite sure if the issue is the grantees don't want to begin any work until they start to receive funds, or if it's more of an accounting thing, because we can have it start several months later if that's easier for everybody's operation. But I get a sense that they want it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's what the information I've received from grantees. They'd like to get these agreements done and get them rolling and started right away. It makes it challenging because the group only meets once a month. So we have a number of contracts or agreements that we need to get going, which is Yarrow, Dender Rescue, and Abundance. If we can get those together, those would go on the March agenda, which is March 28th. And then after that, after you all approve it, it takes a little bit of time to circulate it and get signatures. So that could throw us into a May start date if we don't start until the documents are fully signed. And
Right.
That's not really what our grantees want.
And I can appreciate that. The best I can say is that if we predated it, so if you said, hey, this grant will start April 1st and then it gets signed April 22nd, the obstacle with that is almost worse for the grantees, because if it doesn't get signed and they've begun work under it, there's no payment for it at that point. And so I suspect that they would much rather wait an extra month and ensure that the grant has been approved rather than begin work and not know for sure if it's going to be approved.
Okay. So it sounds like where we are is that it would start on the first, maybe the first day of the month after it has been fully signed. Is that where we are?
Sounds like it.
So the other part of this agreement that, well, I guess with all of that, are you comfortable with this template? Or are there other changes that you would like to talk about? You know, we've got David here, so he's certainly the expert in all of this.
Voting members, any questions, concerns, comments, thoughts? I want to make sure trustee Mason, I don't see him. Is there a way we can?
He's just on.
Oh, there he is. Okay,
Yeah, and I'm all good here. Thank you.
what I'm hearing is you would like a motion.
Well, maybe we should talk about the 6-month and final reports before I do
Okay.
the motion,
Let's do that.
since they do kind of tie in here.
Yes, ma'am.
So I did have a question, the 6-month report. With those narrative questions. I know that's something we had put in place before just to help kind of with that narrative. Have we had any feedback with the first 6 months of folks having trouble with that, any questions, or they feel like those are helpful to help picture where they're at? I didn't know, with our final draft, we have just we only have 2 questions, and I'm wondering if we needed to add a third. So curious.
Yeah, I think that's where we're headed. Thank you. The agreement also says that this group wants a 6-month report, and after it's approved, we make the second payment to the grantee, and then there's also a final report. So also in your packet is the template for the 6-month report and the final report. And we want to hear from all of you if those templates are what you want. You've been through the 6-month process, but you've never been through the final report process, but we're getting there. We have a couple of grantees that need to do final reports. So, talk through
Yeah,
those.
so I'll talk about the 6-month report and the final. And again, I didn't get a chance to see what was asked for before, but we again are following very similar to what behavioral health asked them to submit. We took their questionnaire or their requirements and kept the ones that seem most applicable to this program. And the financials are pretty much the same as what they do in the application. They just show us your final, how's it going. We also ask for a little accounting supporting documentation as well to just show where those numbers are coming from. And so, Carol, I might have misunderstood when she was getting me up to speed a little bit, but it was unclear if there was an expectation of just turning these reports in or coming in and doing a PowerPoint as well for both the 6 and or just the final. And so that's the kind of question is, do these written narratives kind of get the kind of things that you think we should be asking? They're very tied to what they said their objectives were, what we're trying to accomplish. And so just tell us how to go. Did you meet those? How did your performance measures change or the things that you said you do? And so, as time goes on, coming in and doing a presentation after close of everyone, it's just something to consider if that's something you want, or when we get the final report, we just put it in the package. Do you want us to report on it? Do you want the grantee to report on it? And so, and so this is what I remembered from Carol's education last week. So I might be misspeaking if this was all clarified or not.
Yeah, I believe it was the desire of the council, definitely 6 months, and they've come in and answered these questions, done a really great job, honestly. And then I believe the desire was that the 12 month, was that to come back and give us a update, how things are going. So,
So go back to Jody's questions too about the 6 months. So we've been through the 6th month with our 4 grantees. They didn't seem to have any trouble answering the questions or filling out the sheet. The questions were ones that this group had talked about and decided on, and you can certainly change them for this go round if they weren't meaningful to you. I mean, the purpose of this report is for you all to be satisfied that the work is getting done that you want and to answer any questions that you have. So, you know, it's your report. So make sure that it's what you want to know about from the grantees.
No, go ahead, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Thank you. So I think it's great to have, the 6 month grantees questions, because I think it is better to find out if there's some challenges while it's happening and getting that support. At the end, I just feel like those 2 questions are pretty open. And maybe you want more specific, like another question about, do you feel this program or what was funded will be able, your organization will be able to keep it going sustainably? Is there a path for sustainability? Or is this just like a one and, I don't know, because I think that's just a one and done, but some of these are programs that they're expanding and they want to keep rolling. I think it'd be nice to know what steps were taken towards helping it become more sustainable without relying on the grant. Does that make sense?
it does, are we talking about the final?
The final.
Okay, good.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel good about 6 months.
Good with the 6, okay.
I'm good with the 6, but I just feel like I just feel like there has to be another one. And when we talk about what could be improved, are they asking us what we could do to improve or what they can do to improve?
Good question.
Because I feel like maybe they might say, what it can be improved that they could do differently versus, maybe
Fair.
they say another metric they feel should be tracked or something. So I feel like these questions, maybe need a little more clarification, a little more context, a little more, but that's just, again, my just 2 cents, just for me as someone who sits here and voting on this. I feel really I want to say pressure, the responsibility to make sure that we're being transparent, accountable, and being really good stewards of this dollars, because this is kind of a one-time opportunity to really address the needs in our community. And I want to, all these wonderful organizations that are doing great work, want to make sure that we're helping them also be good stewards and help them be sustainable, as well as making sure that in 5-10 years, and people come back and say, how'd you spend the money? I can say, let me tell you. And guess what? This worked and this didn't work. And I just wanted, for me, want to be able to say, I feel good about what we did, and here's the metrics, and here's what we asked, and these organizations are still rolling, and we address this need, and we save lives, and we did A, B, and C. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So thank you for letting me speak.
Yes, what I'm hearing is more of a, will the activities continue even after funding has?
This funding has ended.
Yes,
Okay.
is that, yeah, that's a, did you have a question too?
Yeah, mine's a little more related to the presentation, so I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time. I think I like these added clarifications on these questions by them, by us, and the sustaining revenue, whether they need any or how they're getting sustaining revenue from other places or whatever.
So there's another question you have is, if not, are they getting the funding elsewhere?
And they don't have to give us all their details, right? It's just, do they have a plan?
The plan,
Will they be
yeah.
able to kind of, yeah, or do they need continuing funding from us? And if so, what does it look like?
So is the question, like, do you have a plan to continue these activities after this funding ends? Is that the question?
I think plan, and also if they are intending to. So it's kind of, so yes, a plan, but then also like not some year, some way down the road, but
for this next year.
or the next 3 years or
And then-
something.
And I'm also thinking about things like the schools program, because I've done a lot of this work now and it's winding down and will be self-sustaining because the model, the way it's set up. So that's kind of a little different than like the co-responder that has a need for employees ongoing, right? So they're different and have different needs, but trying to make sure we understand what is going to happen with the program moving forward.
So the question is, I'm just trying to figure out
How to ask it, I
what to
know.
ask, so that I can capture what everyone is interested in.
What is the sustainability plan? What is the future of this program?
What is the future of this program?
That's for you.
That
And
including
financial.
Yeah.
Financial needs, yeah.
And I do think, what can be improved? Well, I think we need to clarify, are they telling us what we can improve? Or are we asking what they think their program?
Well, it'd be nice to have both sides too. That's-
Well, I'm okay with that. I just want to, I just
Yeah, you're
feel like
clear,
we
yeah.
gotta be
Yeah.
clear on what we're asking, because we won't get what, if we don't be clear and be kind and asking, we won't get the information we need. And I also always open to how we can do better. So,
Yeah, when I saw that question, I thought, what, the same thing. Well, that's kind of wide open, but I didn't really know if that was a problem, because if someone says, well, gosh, this whole grant contract is terrible or something, we want to know that. Or, or if it's something that can be improved about their program, that would be a good thing too. So do you want to tighten that down a little bit, or do you want to leave it free form?
What I'm hearing is what can be improved. The work that's being done and what can be improved by the council.
Okay,
That's what I heard. Is that right? Okay. And trustee Mason, I want to make sure I'm not missing you over there. Please jump in anytime.
Nope, all good here. Love those clarifications. I think those are definitely good ads.
and so it sounded like also you were looking for a presentation in front of this group at 6 months and a year. Is that where we are? I just want to,
That's where you were going, right? So perfect.
Yeah, so
Presentations.
I'm thinking about how it went this past year and trying to learn and grow from that. And so part of me had considered, I think the 6 month was really good because we were at a place where we could hear how it was going, if there's any changes needed, that kind of thing. I think at the year mark, we kind of ran into closing out and then starting the new year and got really bunched up for time and stuff. And I actually really liked the idea of final submittals being kind of provided and looked at by you all, and then a kind of a coordinated presentation of how each of them met the objectives and almost at a table. And if there's any, highlight any concerns, and tell me if that's too much to ask of, yeah. Like if there's, but if it needs to be something that we then do or create, that's okay too. But I'm just trying to think of a way that there's not then, we have the end of the grant, presentation taking up majority of our meeting, and then we're also trying to fit in presentations, more new proposals. That's the only concern that I have with that.
yeah, I can't support, asking staff to sort out whether the objectives were completed or not and writing a report. I mean, we're both accountants, we're fiscal people, we're not program people. And that's really outside of the scope of our understanding of what this group is trying to accomplish.
Yes.
So I'm gonna build off of that. And that was kind of what I had my hand mixed again, is because so when he does this in the room a lot, Jessica does these for 5 years for like 77 different grant applications I read through. And that's a question I have is for us and for you, how are we, that's why we're trying to get that data dashboard and that data group together on subcommittee, is how are we going to be able to really understand that they meet their objectives? And so hopefully with this data, which we'll talk about a little bit later, any suggestions from folks who are managing grants to you're hearing our discussion, what are any things that you wish, suggestions or ideas that, hey, maybe have you thought about this? Just curious.
So what we have done to help streamline that in DHS is have a goal quantity as part of the objectives. And so when they're doing their interim and final reports, if they're trying to reach 50 individuals or distribute 10,000 Narcan kits or whatever, there's that goal of what, or their objective of what they're trying to do. And so they enter that, and we have a system for it, you know, it's not Excel spreadsheets anymore, we have a grant portal that can automate some of this stuff for us, so it'll automatically calculate whether or not the percentage complete. And so, if you don't have that, it is manual. But a table and an Excel document, you could aggregate all that stuff if there was a numerical value to it, to do that. And it'll automatically calculate that. If it's 80% met, it'll say it met its objective. So,
Yeah,
we have some other tools at our disposal that makes it a little bit easier. But otherwise, it is combing through, although you only have a few grantees, it's not too much to have to comb through, probably, you know, 5 or 8 of them, you know, whereas we have probably, you know, 30, 40, 50, depending on the time of year, actively going. But again, she said she's not a programmatic person to be evaluating those things, which is also probably a limiting factor.
and we don't have any tools. I mean, this is all just countless with spreadsheets. We don't have any grant management software or anything like that. So this is a really,
I'd love to make a suggestion. We're already at time on this. I want to make sure we get other activities. So the goal was to get the 2024 grant agreement template, the 6-month final report template completed. How about we table the presentation conversation, a group meet with Jessica and sit down and look at it and make a proposal that would work for the following month.
My suggestion is maybe the subcommittee that's already talking about data and trying to do this dashboard, just maybe we just kind of, instead of having another committee
Sure.
meeting, we can just maybe add that to this agenda.
The person on our team who was part of that
Yeah.
is no longer with us,
I
so
know, but-
if you'd like me to, step into it, just one of those.
With that, that would be great with me, if that's okay with.
Hey, Laura?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
You have the capacity. Well, you have the capacity to do.
I'll step in for the next one that you,
Yeah, I don't-
or I'll try to see when you're meeting and see if, we can do that. Otherwise, I'm happy to speak with, Carol. We did this in Excel before we had our grant management system, so we do have some Excel templates that you could do it on, but again, it's about time and capacity and who has the.
And that would be part of that.
Discussion that,
Yep.
so, yep.
Would that be okay, Mr. Chair? And-
Yes.
And, trustee Mason and others, could we add that?
I'm familiar with some good grants and tracking software.
Oh, good. That would be,
I volunteer if you need more members.
Sure.
Okay.
Everyone's open. So it's coming to that meeting, it's been invited to that meeting, you're welcome, everyone's welcome to come to that meeting, so I think it's always open to have whoever might come and discuss that. We haven't scheduled a meeting for this month to be put on hold, which I'll talk about it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I just wanted to point out that we have several grantees whose final reports are actually due this month. And so they were asking me what the council wanted. So if we table that discussion, then
we'll have to give some then, yeah.
we'll just have to table those due dates.
You'll at least have their report template ready. Because that's what we're gonna look at, the final report template, the actual presentation, those things, that's gonna be further discussed. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think. I would make a motion to accept the template for the final report with those adjustments made for the
I'll second that.
And that includes the 6 months.
6 months is fine, as written.
And then also the grant agreement.
Yeah. We're doing both of them on the front page.
Okay.
So would you mind amending?
I
your
will
motion,
amend
please?
that
Thank you.
motion to approve the 2024 grant agreement template, approval of reporting templates with the changes to the final one as noted on questions and the fiscal tree.
That's a good motion.
I'll second that.
There's a second. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All those in favor, signal by aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you for that. We do have a table assignment that will be noted in the minutes regarding presentations and outputs. All right. Okay, moving to number 5, we are excited to have the Northern Colorado Drug Task Force here today to provide a presentation. Thank you to District Attorney McLaughlin for proposing this idea back in November. But Dan Ponce and team, you're ready to go. Please join us. Come be part of the team over here. We're excited to hear from you. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I'll just kick it off and pass it to Lieutenant Hertz, but I suggest this because I thought it would be helpful for everyone to hear sort of what's going on the law enforcement end, what the sort of on the street seizures and uptick in fentanyl over the last couple of years looks like, and I know Lieutenant Hertz presents that data well. And then I have a couple members of my team I'll introduce here. Lindsay Moss, who's our complex case prosecutor, and Mike DeShanes, who's one of our senior deputy DAs who works on drug issues and wiretaps and so forth. So I'll kick it off, Lieutenant Hertz.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having us. My name is Mark Hertz. I'm a lieutenant at Lumber County Sheriff's Office and the commander of the task force. Is there a button or am I pointing?
You just point.
I have about 5 minutes, so I'm probably going to create more questions than answers. But I'll have my business cards here and we'll be hanging out afterwards for anything. Here's a basic NCDCF structure. DA's office support, Michael and Lindsay. We have sergeants from LCSO, LPD, Fort Collins. This right side is our intel unit. They provide intel for the task force, but they also provide threat assessments for the whole county, large events, and they do a great job. Detectives, we have some admin, and Jason Temko and TJ Jones, they are DEA agents assigned to our building. So it's a great federal resource that we have. I want you to pay attention to TFO Michael Moat. He's a Fort Collins employee currently assigned at DEA Strike Force, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit. Our goals: partner with and educate our communities about substance abuse issues and work together to identify community-based solutions. Team of citizen, business, civic, local, regional leadership for the purpose of incorporating creative solutions that are efficient, have a long-lasting impact. Demand reduction is what we need to get better at. And law enforcement can't do it by itself. Our job is supply reduction, which is important, but we're never going to arrest our way out of this issue. So Detective Bonds is going to get more into demand reduction and what the task force is doing to try to get everybody to the table. Do a lot of education, working with supporting our youth community stakeholders and community organizations, harm reduction specialists, behavioral health specialists. That's why it's so important that we got the invite and are able to give you a little bit of what we do today. Working with and supporting court programs, drug court. Corporal Scott Gammon is the official member of the task force that goes to drug court every single day, and he's our representative there. Actively support the education and prevention efforts done by various foundations and community-based organizations and individuals. Continue to educate and encourage. And then last year we did 47 presentations, both to citizens and law enforcement. Again, that's in 2023. And our goal is to, I don't want to say double that, but we are going to beat that number in 2024. What we do, we coordinate long-term drug investigations, confidential informant management, working undercover, surveillance, criminal intelligence gathering, and tech operations. You probably, I know this is an educated room. I'll just kind of how we got here, you know, in 2010, it was prescription drugs. I just had my knee replaced in September and I was completely kind of freaked out about what they wanted to give me, because what we will find is there are addicts involved in all of this, but there's also really good people that get caught up in it and or they try it one time and that's the last time. So obviously that went from pills to heroin to fentanyl and all obviously opioid based. I'll give you some numbers of how that's trending now. Okay, that's what they look like, the original blues. Where these are coming from is predominantly south of the border and China. predominantly south of the border, and they don't care who takes these, they don't care who dies, they don't care about anything. And the blues are the original, but they have Skittles, they have Teslas, it's a marketing ploy. They're trying to put out their product and sell it. Unfortunately for juveniles and some people that don't know, it looks like candy. There's no consistency in these. Some have 0, while some has as much as 10 milligrams. 2 milligrams is a lethal dosage in most individuals, depending on tolerance. And DEA recently came out with, I think the new number is 7 out of 10 pills that are distributed have 2 milligrams. So if you're an everyday user, 2 milligrams isn't going to be probably much of a problem. As a matter of fact, some people that we talk to report they do 10, 15, even up to 50 a day. But if you are giving this a try and you get a 1 milligram or 2 milligram pill, that is not the outcome we're looking for. It's inexpensive to manufacture. And we're seeing them in all kinds of things. We found fentanyl tested positive in Xanax, ecstasy, meth, cocaine, and heroin. This is pretty self-explanatory. As everybody knows, it's 50 times stronger than heroin, stronger than morphine, blueberries, candies, China white. All right, if you would go to the green one. So, yeah, sorry. If you hit 2023. Down at the bottom. Okay, so we're partially funded by Rocky Mountain HIDA, which is Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Association. Every month you can see, so this is the totals of 2023. We do this every single month. So the detectives provide a monthly report of narcotics they've seized and what kind and what the weight is. So we have grams, milliliters, grams, pounds. You're going to see dosage unit for fentanyl. Those are the pills, or those are a pill. Also, sometimes the pills are weighed in grams. Each pill is about 1/10 of a gram. And then powder. So we have a very specific way that they request reporting from us. Could you slide all the way to the right, please? So I actually did some math and converted all the grams to pounds, which I'll show you, but and I'm only going to talk about a couple of the main 4 today, but this is kind of our reporting process that we have to do every month, and we get audited every quarter. You would go back to the PowerPoint, please. All right, so we talked about Mike Mode. If you look at the top right-hand side, that's DEA Mode 2023. He works DEA Strike Force. He's a TFO there, which means he has a much longer reach than we do. He can call up San Diego. If he's on a wire case, he can call San Diego and say, hey, there's a car, stop it. And turns out there's 100,000 pills. He has the ability to do that. So his numbers are going to be a little higher, rightfully so. If we look at the far left side, that's 2022, our whole task force stats. That includes Mike Mo. So in 2022, 311,979 dosage units of fentanyl, 173 pounds of meth, 126 pounds of cocaine, 9.3 pounds of heroin, and 42 firearms. So in 2023, I separated Mike Mode. So those are his numbers and these are our numbers, okay? So our task force in Larimer County, and I guarantee you a lot of those were coming up, but In Larimer County, we seized 78,323 dosage units, 42.1 pounds of meth, 36.1 pounds of cocaine, 0.8 pounds of heroin, and 59 firearms. So if you take the firearms out of the equation, you can see the trend here. Fentanyl is going up, meth down, cocaine down, heroin down. Make sense?
Clarify, Lieutenant Rich, this is just the task force seizures, not all Larimer County law enforcement, correct?
Task force, yes, thank you. Okay? OD investigations. I don't know if you guys, do you want Lindsay to speak on this?
I was gonna touch on it
Okay.
quickly, but we're probably running short on time, so.
All I'll say is 2022, we had 51 overdose deaths with fentanyl, 2023, 35, and we have 4 year-to-date in 2024. And what we're doing this year, thanks to Dan Bonson and some other people, is we are now able to kind of grab the law enforcement phone calls for people calling law enforcement that have OD'd but survived because of naloxone. So we had 11 already in 2024, and those are just the ones that were reported. Thank you.
I got a question. So did you say those are just fentanyl overdose deaths?
Yes.
The reason for that, I'll get into it, but is that the law right now in Colorado allows us to prosecute fentanyl deaths separately from other narcotic deaths. So that's what we're investigating.
All right, so. Take one pass around. I didn't know how many to bring, but so let me talk about the other side of what we're discussing. So in 2022, we had 110,000 overdose related deaths, drug related deaths in our country. Over 70,000 of those were fentanyl. Colorado had about 1,800 of those, 900 of those, over 900 were fentanyl. 2023, the only stats I can find so far is 112,000 people. 2023, they're kind of behind. They've got to get that certificate and such to get all the facts. But 112,000 people across our country, so it's elevated a little bit. One of the things that I want to touch on real quick is, and I'm very passionate about this, so I can go on for hours, so I'll really try to limit it. But at the end of the day, what we need to, as law enforcement, we need to be aware of, right? It's the other part of the industry. That's the doctors, that's the addiction specialists, behavioral health, right? That's the families of people who have died. That's families of people who are struggling with addiction, right? Because we have to all sit down, and I look at it as a big table. We all have a voice at this table, right? All of us, community, everybody, DA's office, from prosecutors all the way to the medical side. We're not going to rush our way out of this. We understand that, but we need to be there for our community, right? We need as law enforcement to be partnered with, we're experts here. And people say we have all these record-setting seizures and stuff, but the problem is even record-setting deaths, right? But we can't forget the component of what we do, because if we didn't, imagine if all those dosage units hit the street. So what we have done is we have partnered with the foundation and those cards that we're handing out. We'll talk about this one first. So Voices for Awareness. I'm very fortunate. Voices for Awareness is a foundation that began a couple of years back. Andrea Thomas, who founded it, her daughter, who was on this card, passed away from a counterfeit Percocet that had contained fentanyl. So her foundation is based out of Grand Junction. It's also facing fentanyl is part of her foundation. And she goes across the country. She's in Washington, D.C. quite often, battling with legislation, talking to anybody that'll listen. I'm very fortunate. I was asked to be an advisor on her newly created Facing Fentanyl board. And on that board is another person, Amy Novell, who runs Alexander Novell Foundation. Her son was 14 when he died of counterfeit pill. She's currently in a lawsuit with several other families battling Snapchat because that's where this distribution occurred. So we are aligned with some really, really, really wonderful people. Locally and nationally. Here's what I want to present to you, right? So this card here, this is how you know you make an impact with people. Andrea called me one day and said, "Hey, Dan," she said, "we got a card that's an educational card that we've made. Would you be interested in looking at it?" I said, "Absolutely." So she sends me the card, but ladies and gentlemen, she sent me the card with all her stuff already on it. I didn't have to do anything to this card. These cards are made for schools. They're made for SROs to hand out at high schools if they want to. They're made for community groups. I mean, they're just basic fentanyl facts for most people who don't understand what fentanyl is and the destruction it causes, right? So that's what those cards are for. You can go ahead and click the next one, if you don't mind, please. One more. This card, we investigate overdose death investigations as Commander Hurst put out. Voices for Awareness is all about prevention, awareness, and education, right? Trying to stop other families from going through what Andrea and her family went through. Trying tirelessly day after day after day to get the information out there to prevent people from experiencing the same thing. So when we go on over death, if you look, go ahead and click the next one if you don't mind. On the next, this is a QR code. If you take your phone and you scan that code, it will take you to Facing Fentanyl Now, which is a subsidiary of her foundation. There's a gallery on there. You click on the gallery and you can scroll through hundreds, if not 1,000 pictures of people who have passed away from fentanyl. Most of them look like your next door neighbor. Some are young children who got into fentanyl that was laying around. Most of them are young people. The beauty about this is when we go on these overdose death investigations, we give these cards and we explain what this card is, because I don't understand what that feels like. This is a community people can connect with. We're giving them the ability to connect with others who have lost loved ones to this horrible thing. With that, I present this question to you, right? And I do this when I talk in court, so some of these folks have heard this. What is the value of human life? Right now, our end users are paying $2 to $4 for a fentanyl pill up here, okay? So we go to an overdose death scene. Generally, there's some kind of paraphernalia around the person who's deceased. Generally, it's a piece of foil. Generally, there's a partial pill still left on that foil that they were smoking before they died. If a pill is $4, and I'll say a half a pill's left on that piece of foil, so we'll say that's $2 worth. Is the value of human life $4 or is it $2? And I'll tell you that that's a loaded question, right? This is my point. Human life is priceless. There is no numeric value. No matter what your struggles are, everybody in this world deserves a shot at a good life. And some people will fail multiple times before they can get there. So our job and our responsibility and what we really are finding purpose in is doing what we do best, bringing to this large table what we do best, trying to keep the poison out of our communities, making those who are bringing it here accountable. While on the flip side, acknowledging people who have addictions and commit crime also need to be accountable. But we need to look at the bigger picture over here, right? If you can stop the addiction or slow it down, you can probably save a lot of people from committing crime. Right? Therefore, the innocent victims who are property, identity theft crimes, those people, it benefits them as well, right? It benefits the community as a whole, and that's law enforcement's responsibility. And I'll leave you with this. Is anybody in here familiar with the starfish story? It's a cute metaphor, okay? So for those that aren't, let me just say this is the why we should be doing and why we should think this way. An old man goes down to the beach, I'll paraphrase, goes down to the beach to do his writing every morning. He gets down to the beach one morning, he looks down, he sees this little boy, he's throwing something into the ocean. So he walks over to the little boy and he says, "Hey, little boy, what are you doing?" And he picks up a starfish, he throws it in the water. And he says, "Well, the tide's really high. The sun's just getting ready to hit the noon time. And if I don't get these starfish back in the water, they're going to die." And the old man kind of smiles and laughs to himself and says, "Well, little boy, there's hundreds of starfish here. Seems to me like it's not going to matter." So the little boy picks up a starfish and he throws it in the water. And he turns to the old man and smiles and he says, "Made a difference to that." So the point is that we cannot give up on people. We cannot give up on the fight of what we need to do. We're all experts in something, but we need to be sitting at the same table, coming up with creative solutions to help our communities be better. And that's law enforcement's responsibility as well. So those partnerships are important. What you folks do is extremely important, and we appreciate your time and thank you for allowing us to speak.
I know we're probably out of time, so I'm going to be quick here, but just to pick up the baton, what the enforcement looks like at the district attorney's office once these cases come to us. In 2023, about 17% of our fentanyl cases were distribution cases, which means about 83% were possession cases. We're treating those cases very differently. So on a possession case, we're getting someone into treatment. We're offering them diversionary opportunities or probation with treatment 10 out of 10 times. Every once in a while, someone's going to have jail on that case because either they've just straight refused our offer of a treatment-based sentence, or they have some other non-possession case that is getting closed with jail or Department of Corrections time, and they get lumped in together. But that's our goal in those possession cases. Those possession cases are all misdemeanors with the law change a couple of years ago. On the distribution side, we are trying to make sure that we are doing what we can do to stem the tide of distribution in Larimer County. And so we're taking those cases very seriously and trying to make sure if there are gray area cases that we are sorting out true distributors from users or from someone just passing to a friend. Of those distribution cases, of that 17%, 2023, we filed 23 DF1s, a drug felony one. The fentanyl weight limit for that is 50 grams. So that's 50 grams of fentanyl. That is a large amount. We filed 23 of those cases just in 2023 in Larimer County. Another thing we do, and to pick up the baton about victims, right, is another one of the law changes I mentioned a minute ago is our ability to prosecute fentanyl overdoses causing death. That is one of the main things that Ms. Moss does in her position. We filed 4 of those cases. We've gotten convictions on 2 of those cases. I can tell you that myself and Ms. Moss, and I think someone from the Drug Task Force, were personally sitting with the parents of one of the victims a few months back. And it was an incredibly moving experience. This was a family that we brought up here from Georgia. And their daughter was here in Fort Collins, or up north in Fort Collins, and had been in rehab in Fort Collins, got out, relapsed, asked for something that wasn't fentanyl, I can't remember what. And the dealer said, I have fentanyl I'm willing to sell you, came over, sold her fentanyl, and she died. She was killed by that substance. And so her family was shocked that we had the ability in Colorado to do this. They were shocked that the Drug Task Force was willing to put those resources in, that we cared enough about a victim of a fentanyl death to put those resources in and to try to get justice for their daughter. They all had tattoos of little bees on their wrists or on their hands, because B was their nickname for their daughter. And so I think they said 12 of the family members had that tattoo. So a lot of what we're doing is trying to make sure that we are honoring the victims of this horrible epidemic, and that we're making sure that we're getting justice, and that we're separating, again, those people that are victims of this epidemic from the people that are perpetrators of this epidemic and killing people in our community. And so of that, so many of the groups we see coming in here, right, are such essential players in helping us identify the victims and treat the victims and try to stem the tide from that user level. Is really important. And so hopefully today gave you sort of a piece of what the huge scope of the law enforcement work looks like to prosecute those dealer and overdose death level cases. And any of us are happy to take questions, but that's probably all the time.
Questions?
Quickly.
Yes.
Thank you all for the presentation. Thank you for your very important work. Just truly appreciate the fight and the work that you do. And thank you for the successful prosecution. Something to be very proud of. My question is, what suggestions or what things would you like for us to know, or what would like for you to see us to do to partner with you or to partner with the community efforts to make a difference? Whether we're saving lives or helping folks get into treatment, or other things that maybe this council, we're all not subject matter experts. We need everyone to help us kind of guide us. And I'm just curious about your insights for that.
Well, I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is, when we talk to legislatures, everybody thinks that the cops are going to say we need more tougher laws, all that stuff, right? And we do. I mean, there's arguments on both sides of the house for that. But what I really think is important is when we look at foundations and we look at the level of voices and we look at things and people and organizations who are really trying to make a difference, right? And really trying to help their community and help those that need it. So for me, the education, the prevention, the awareness program, the foundations that take care of those recovery, those in recovery, right? Because they make the best presenters. So for me, it would be, somehow, some way tied to our prevention and our awareness efforts and education along and supporting those foundations, behavioral health, Summit Stone, the folks who really are on the front lines when they're dealing with that, and make sure that we're taking care of them, but we're all partners, so we're all communicating about it. But I do think that some of those programs and some of those partnerships for us has been invaluable. The conversations and the people you meet, and it's unbelievable when you start connecting with those folks who are literally out there every day doing that. So that would be my 2 cents. It's just anything that can help the community foundations and the people who are really out there trying to make the community better for all of us. And of course, law enforcement, anything we get, we're happy to take. But perspective wise, for me, it's about the community, because we're all part of that. So it benefits everybody, regardless of where that money seems to go, as long as it's going for the cause.
Thank you.
Another thing I would add to that, right, is I know a lot of what the task force does is also try to, again, work their way up to these actual players that are bringing fentanyl into the community and making sure, again, that's what we're concentrating our law enforcement resources on. And so, one of the conversations I know I've had with some of you all individually, right, is do people feel safe calling when there's an overdose? Do people feel safe telling law enforcement where they got it from? And I know often the answer is no, and I understand there's huge historical reasons for that. But one of the things that we want to do, especially I want to do at the DA's office, is make sure that people do understand that, right? That our goal is not to be targeting users of fentanyl. Our goal is to make sure that we target the distributors of fentanyl. And so there is a lot of room that the task force has, that we have to work with people to make sure that we are not doing that. In fact, the overdose law actually has different rungs of accountability, right? Because the design is that we are targeting those high level folks.
Just a quick question. Gordon, you had referenced when they had the metrics up about the amounts from 22 to 23, separating out DEA. And you asked whether it was just them. Do you know what it about, is that most of it, or if you included all the law enforcement agencies, would it?
I asked that because I knew the answer to that, which is why I asked the question, but I don't know the answer to your question, which is what the total is.
Total for, now I got confused.
It was,
Like what all of Larimer County would have seized in 2023, all
Oh.
agencies.
Oh, well, you know what? We have our hand in a fair amount of that, because if a patrol officer pulls somebody over and there's distribution amounts, or someone wants to cooperate with law enforcement, our on-call will get called. And then we will go help work, either take over the investigation or help work through it. So, you know, we're getting a fair amount of, those are probably pretty accurate. I guess the only ones that, the vast majority for sure, because the only ones that wouldn't is, patrol officer contacts somebody, they have a gram, they say they don't want to talk, it's a misdemeanor in the state of Colorado, they're probably not going to call the on-call. So, even if there's a large amount and the person suspect doesn't want to talk, those officers are still calling us.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions? Well, I just thank you for coming and presenting this information. I do appreciate, Detective, your point about community. That is absolutely the goal here, is to support those programs that are working through the continuum, prevention all the way to recovery, treatment, harm reduction. So thank you. Appreciate the presentation. We'd love to get you back down the road, get updates and see hear how things are going. Hopefully those numbers keep going down, keeping fentanyl. Wouldn't that be great?
We're not going to quit.
Yeah, I'm sure, unfortunately. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Moving along to the housing program proposal and discussion. If you recall at last month's meeting, a great presentation on social connectedness as well as housing. Social connectedness, there was a motion approved, funding organizations, but we were running out of time, so we tabled the conversation surrounding housing programs. So that's why it's back on our agenda. So we are going to ask Abundance Foundation Harvest Fund they've already gone over the presentations, but just highlight some stuff that you have in your packet. And then they've updated their budget proposal for our consideration. So I will ask Abundance Foundation to take the floor.
Let's just want to do it together. Sorry about my tardiness. I was at a custody hearing for one of our clients who's a single dad. Doesn't seem to get a lot of representation in these realm of custody hearings. So that was kind of an interesting case to be involved with. But anyway, the housing piece, Kyle and I had met after the last session and we came to an agreement on what the division looks like on the total amounts, because we were over the total budgeting proposal. So we came to an agreement that works for him, it works for us, so we didn't have to adjust or have discussion on adjusting any of the numbers on it. For us, the housing piece, we're actually looking at a property I talked about last time. We could open a house in Loveland. We've actually found one that we're trying to get for a women's house in Loveland already. So we'll see how that plays out. Nothing's final until we have the keys, but it's in the process of that. The budget for us on there is for the next year. We can help around 200 individuals. It's hard to say exactly how many because it's sober living and people come in and out over the course of time. So it's around that 200 person mark, which would go right in hand with our growth to open a women's house and possibly another men's house in Loveland over the next year. The idea with this is now to expand our services from Fort Collins to Loveland. And now with the connection piece with Kyle and Harvest Farm, they're actually going to be doing tours coming up in the next couple months of guys transitioning from their program into our program that are coming out of Harvest Farm. So I know that I've set up with their outreach people several of those visits. So we have, right now we're on waiting list. So hopefully we can have the houses up and going by the time the guys are out of there and start moving into our housing. So that's really the overall goal, is to help develop that relationship and have them have enough beds for what they're doing. And then have us have the funding to be able to help scholarship the guys when they get out. And allow them to start setting up their budgeting and life skills things. Because the whole process and the idea of ours is that in working with our recovery coaches and getting scholarship funding to get into the houses, that they're able to develop the life skills and the budgeting platform and budgeting skills overall to be able to be self-sufficient and get into their own apartments or shared housing or something along those lines, and have a sober living within that first year of their sobriety. So the idea is that when they're coming out of jail, they get to either Harvest Farm or to us, and then they don't go back to jail. It's the idea is we're trying to have warm transition periods between each of the most dangerous pieces are the transition periods. When they're getting out of jail, when they're getting out of detox or treatment, when they're going from sober living to their own place. So each of these like high stress environments, high transition environments, is where the highest risk of the relapse and recidivism is. So we're using the coaches and the housing piece to fill the gaps in that process. And I think that what we've done so far in the first 2 years is the numbers have shown that. So continuing that and having this relationship with these guys seems to work well for them. Question.
But your request for like the house you're looking for in Lebanon is for women.
Correct. Yep. So that's the one that's in between the men's and women's. That's the one that's in highest demand right now. And so, but we have other properties that we're looking at, just finding properties in Northern Colorado.
To clarify that, the scholarships might not only be used for women at the Loveland House, they'll be used for wherever.
Right. So the scholarships will be used for the houses that we already have, and then the additional houses that we're trying to get.
Both.
Yeah.
I'm glad you both asked that question, because that was something that was appealing to me, was that, the addition of this additional house for women, because I think that is a strong need. And so I feel like that was kind of something that we understood that maybe this was going to be kind of more of a focus. And so for me, that was something that it felt appealing, and something that I felt like we had a little more targeted response. So it would be nice to know exactly what you think that's going to be, instead of just kind of like, oh, we think this will happen, but if we can kind of make that parameter, because I think it is a need, having some more beds for women. So
yeah, so if we can, there's other houses that are potential, but the one that we're looking at in particular, we would have 10 or 11 beds in the house.
That's one for women.
Yeah.
another question. So would you be open to, if granted any of the funds, being able to say that those could be used more for women, since the Harvest House is just for men? So we would know both sectors were being addressed.
Yeah, so in opening a second women's house, so then we have 2 women's houses and 1 men's house. So we'd be able to serve at that point up to 17 women and 9 men in housing at that point.
So I'm just making sure, could you be able to clarify that in your proposal, that percentage for women to men? I guess the question I'm hearing is, you've got 211 units of 200.
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing from members is the assurance that a majority or proportion of them are going to females.
Well, I mean, that would just be based on who's in housing. So, I mean, if we have 17 beds for women and 9 for men, there'd be more than double the amount.
And that's what you currently have is 17 or?
Well, with the other house. So with the houses that we have now, we have 9 beds for men and 6 for women. But we also scholarship women that are in the Vine House and in the Oxford House and in the Lighthouse and in the, like we have scholarshiping that's going all over the place. We try and keep the focus on our housing so that I'm not just paying mortgages on houses that we don't own. But so we have the capability to do that in the other housing. We're just trying to, over this next year, get it to where we're doing it specifically in our own housing. And that's just how long it takes to buy a property and go through the process of getting it certified and all the things.
Maybe what would be helpful is, could you just quickly go through the process for determining who gets scholarships? Like, is there a prioritization process or something that determines the need or who we're giving scholarships to?
Yeah, so all of our clients they're all on Medicaid. So because we can only do peer services for Medicaid clients because regular insurance plans won't cover it. And so they have to be on that. So typically they're coming out of someplace like jail, or they're a referral from jail or prison. So probation and parole, we have those relationships. Detox, the Longview Centers is sending people to us. Out in Greeley, True North is sending them to us. So we're getting them all from each of those, but they get onto our website where they fill out an application for whichever one of the sober living. So there's an application for men's sober living, women's sober living, and the scholarship. And so those applications are pretty detailed. So one of the things that we like, other than their baseline information, the things that we're looking for is, why do they want to work with the recovery coach? What are they bringing positive wise to the sober living? How do they feel about living with a large group of men or women? What do they see as the pros and cons of that? Have they been in that situation before? What are the substances that they're struggling with? And really make them lay out everything that they have gone through to get to that point as to why they deserve the opportunity to be in the house. Now, if somebody just fills out the application, they put yes, no, I don't know, maybe, we'll still contact them and find out, but we're going to have them go back and redo the application and really think through their answers if they want that choice or if they want that chance. So after they fill that out and our recovery coaches review it, they'll reach out to them and set up a time to do a phone interview and an in-person interview. And then a house visit to see if they're going to be a good fit for the house. So we go through 4 levels of vetting to see if somebody's going to be a good fit and if they can show up to the sober living and pass a UA, have a clean UA when they show up. And in that vetting process, if somebody's not going to be a good fit, we find out usually pretty early. Sometimes it gets all the way to the UA before they get in the house. And then it's like, okay, well, now we got to start over and get you back to Longview or out to Greeley or wherever it is to get you back in through the whole process of it. So there's
So back to, I think we're all asking the same question. I see that it says sober housing for 25 clients per month for 12 months. Is there a way, because I think we all were very attracted to, hey, this is going to add the women's housing and provide extra beds. So I think you said 11 beds. Could we say that 11 beds have to be for women and the other 14 for men? Is that going to be time to up for you? It's just, I feel like we want to, this was attracted to us because of the addition of women beds.
Yeah, so I don't have a way to say the exact numbers.
Brett, could I piggyback that?
Yeah.
Since you have roughly 2-to-1 beds for women with the addition of the new house, perhaps in the proposal, you could put in a percentage that 2/3 of your scholarships would go to female clients, 1/3 to male.
Yeah.
And I think would that clarify things and meet the needs of the council?
I have a question because now I'm starting to get stuck a little bit on some of our language. Is do you also accept non-binary, trans, or other folks into your program?
As far as coaching goes, as far as housing goes, it is situational, depending on if they're going to be comfortable in either one of the houses and the house is going to be a comfortable place for them, or if we need to refer them to a different sober living.
So it's based on
It's
their
a case,
comfort.
it's a case by case basis.
Well, and I heard you say you had a wait list for women. So
Yeah.
we had heard that.
We do, but so here's the thing with sober living. The turnover is insanely high overall.
Yeah.
So the what I'm talking about, like the numbers on things, everything is like a guess at best. So we can say 2/3 goes to women. At the same time, if a guy's coming to us and they need scholarshiping to get into our men's house, I'm not going to be like, this money is for women. I can't do this. And so based on the number, this is what I'm saying, based on the number of beds, the math is 2/3 would be going towards women in opening another house. There isn't a way to guarantee that that's the way that it plays out in the reality of the situation. Simply like based on like the numbers of beds, yes. Based on who's coming to us and who relapses and who comes from jail. And like if 10 guys come to us from Harvest Farm and we need to open up another men's house. So say then we have 17 beds altogether and the majority of them and we have 17 women's beds and 9 men's beds. And then Harvest Farm sends us 25 guys and we have an opportunity to get another house that's 20 beds for 20 guys because we can fill those beds right away. I'm going to buy that house, fill the 20 beds with the 20 guys that are coming to us and scholarship all 20. So it doesn't mean that I'm not going to still scholarship the women in that case. It's just the whole situation is so fluid with the way that it works that I could write on paper, yes, we can say 2/3 goes to this. How that plays out in the reality of the course of the next year is.
So where are you at with the Loveland Women's House?
Yeah.
We're in contract talks with them to get the right price point.
Okay, so it's not signed.
It's not, there's nothing that's signed. I don't believe anything. We've had 15 different houses that we've had houses under contract that fell through.
Sure.
So like I said, until we have the keys in our hands, I can't say that.
Where are you getting the funding for those houses? Is
We-
that a need that you?
We have a private investor that myself and my friend is a real estate agent in the area go through, and they're a bunch of retired guys that have money to invest and have a passion for what we're doing. It's a better price point than what we get from somewhere else.
Where the council is with this proposal, we are, I want to make sure we have 15 minutes for Harvest Farm.
I guess I don't understand what you're saying about the fluidity. I think when we first got presented, we were all very excited about expanding into Loveland, having this Loveland house and having more beds for women. And I guess that's kind of where, that's what I kind of feel like that's where I'm still kind of feeling like that's kind of what we thought this was headed, and that's where I'm kind of wanting to keep it. But I also want to provide you a little bit of flexibility if in case there's a strong need. But really, I felt like it was something that I felt maybe was a need to have more beds for women. So
Well, it is. I mean, that's what we're doing. Like that's number one priority is that. So I'm trying to find out what the question is on the women's beds, because it is like that's
Well, like, I guess
on the
my
priority list, that's number
my
one.
concern is in a year you come back and said, well, the house fell through and it never worked out. We couldn't find beds. So all the money went to men. Because we didn't put it on paper that, we have to be specific and clear. This is what we're hoping. I'm just thinking, because I could come back and say, well, that didn't work out. So we had to take the money and use it this way. And
I believe that over the course of this first 2 years, everything that I put on paper, I've done. Everything that I said that I would do, I've done. Every obligation to every grant. Like, I don't understand where it's like what I'm saying to you right now isn't valid enough to say that my next house this year is going to be a women's house.
Well, as the chair of the council, we do have a obligation, a mandate, make sure that it is documented on what's the proposal and where the funding is, because we ultimately, it comes back to the state. We
Right.
do have connection there, and if this was intended for one thing, we hear you, your heart's in the right place, don't get that wrong. But we want to just make sure that then what was reported, what was signed in the contract is exactly what happened. With just this, there isn't any written indication of where exactly male or female. So that's where we're just making sure we're
So
doing
then the
this.
question then becomes, we open a women's house and we say, and I have the numbers on paper for, this is what we're gonna spend on the women's house, this is what we're gonna spend on the men's house. And we get to a point where we max out the spending on the women's house, or we max out the spending on the men's house, and we have the money and we're not using the money for what it says on the piece of paper, but it's just the fluidity of the situation demands the need for it, then are we still allowed to use the funding for that or not?
Well,
Could we suggest he can come back to the council at that point?
Well, and
Yeah.
also with the 6-month report, in 6 months, you're gonna come back and do a 6-month report and say, here's how it's going. And there's always that flexibility that we have in that 6-month report to say, this is how it's going. Just right now, it just says sober living for 25 clients. And so that to me is that's not specific. So I believe what you're saying, and I'm not questioning I know your heart's in the right place and you're doing great work. I'm not questioning your view. It's just that like the chair said, we have to be held accountable. And so it feels like that's how we kind of thought the presentation was going. That's why I just wanted clarification.
So I do have to call, I'm sorry, we do have to call the question, to be fair to our other, where does the council desire with this? Do we want to table it for members to get some time to think about it? I just so we give harvest on appropriate time.
I'd like to make a motion to support this request for $211,000 for sober housing for 25 clients, with the indication that the majority of the funds will go toward women right now with your focus and the intent to serve mostly women, and then come back at the 6-month period or whenever it seems like if the need is changing, and you have to come back 6 months anyway, to provide an update. And if there's, understand that the need, sorry, I'm going on long on my motion, but I just wanted to circle back to, I understand that the fluidness of need and you're wanting to serve where the need is at the time. But I think to start off, what I'm proposing for the motion is with the indication that your intent is to serve primarily women with these funds, and we'll update as needed.
Okay. You want me to update the budget on that?
So I got a motion, sorry, is there a second just before?
I'll second that, but you said the intent for the majority or
Their intention will be to use the majority of the money for women.
Based upon circumstances, that kind of whatever.
Well, I just think, I don't want to get too complicated. I think with the intent, the majority of the funding will be used towards housing.
Yes.
Does that feel more comfortable?
So I want to make sure, do you have that?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll rewatch.
The intent is for the majority of the funding to house women.
Yes.
Does that mean over 50%?
Well, I think your majority would be 51% or more. I'm just trying to be a little bit flexible. Yeah. But
All right, so we do have a motion and a second. Any further conversation?
No, I think I'm good as long as, they come back to us knowing that those numbers are really important to us. So in your presentation in 6 months, and if you're finding difficulty even before that, make sure you can reach out to us and so we can keep everything where it's supposed to be.
Trustee Mason, I just want to make sure you have an opportunity to chime in here.
No, I think I'm good with what's been proposed.
All right, any further conversation? Okay, we'll go call the vote. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Indicate by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Does anybody oppose? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
All right, Harvest Farm.
How much time?
Yeah,
I can be quick if you like. I feel like I presented to you guys enough. You could probably tell me about Harvest Farm. So yeah, let's go to the next slide, please. So brief recap on the program, 72 beds for men. Average program stay 9 months to 1 year. And we have 4 beds for peer support. Next slide, please. Working to help men achieve sobriety, healthy community, stable housing, employment, and sustainable income. Next slide. We'll go to the next one. We went over this last time. So our goal with our proposal is to expand to a point where we can add 8 additional beds to Harvest Farm. And those are not 8 beds that need to be funded year to year. This is an opportunity for us to grow, remodel current infrastructure that we have that will add 8 permanent beds to our program, bringing our total program bed capacity from 72 to 80 beds, while still having those 4 peer support beds. Next slide, please. So this is our projected outcomes following our expansion that we believe that we can achieve at Harvest Farm. 25,000 nights of shelter, 53,000 meals, help 95 men obtain housing, help 68 obtain employment, 48 graduates, total program participants of 155, all while not charging them any money, regardless of their insurance status, whether that be Medicaid, private insurance, whatever the case may be. That's still our goal and our mission. Next slide, please. So for us, infrastructure barriers. That has been a big one, why we haven't expanded. So for some agencies, some private treatment centers, when they grow beds, billing increases or income increases, right? So it then becomes much more sustainable. For us, we increase beds, we increase costs and services, but we're not increasing revenue because we don't charge anybody. And it's our intent to continue that model, right? If the average person battling substance abuse falls below the poverty line, we don't want to enter into a system where finances then become a huge barrier for individuals. We are also working on a property that's old, that is not connected to a city water, that is completely dependent on septic, which makes things difficult and expensive. And when you have 155 men living there throughout the year, they're not always kind to our property and to our buildings, which is okay. That's what we're there for. But it's also the reality of our situation, which is why, included in our proposal, we're asking for funds to help support, update our septic system, because from November of 2023 through January, we had to spend over $20,000 on simply maintenance repairs. And that's just for one of our buildings. And that's not sustainable. And so that's why, when asked over the years, why have we not expanded? Why haven't we grown? This is such a good service. You guys are almost always full. There are good results and outcomes. It's because it was not sustainable until we found this opportunity. At which point, if we're able to make the updates that we want to our building and our infrastructure, we feel that we will be able to sustain this long term. Next slide, please. So this is our updated proposal. So we went down about $46,000 after a conversation that Brian and I had surrounding what is and is not doable for us. It's not like we can't remodel half the structure and then add 4 beds. It's really remodel the whole thing in an effort to make it sustainable and workable for us. So we are asking from the Opioid Abatement Council today $400,000 to add 8 additional beds to Harvest Farm, and those will be 8 sustaining beds for us that will keep bringing our total capacity to 80 program participant beds, and then 84 of the grand total with our peer support services, which the Impact Fund has in the past very generously helped out.
I do have a question.
Please.
So I did connect you to my environmental health director around septic, because it's important for everyone to know there's a threshold on the amount of wastewater that you generate per policy and the state regulation. Once you exceed that, you no longer can be permitted by the local board of health. It has to go through the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment site application, which that number then triples, quadruples quite a bit. Site applications can go almost to $500,000. My question is, is it confirmed that you can replace that septic system by my staff and it be local permanent versus going to have to go to the state?
We have not confirmed that yet, no. But we're in process of talking with you. Thank you for that.
So I would say this is premature because want to support this until we know that, because through my career, that has been an unfortunate time, can be a game changer when if it has to go to the state, that becomes an entirely different requirement. You have to meet certain discharge permits and this and that. Hopefully it doesn't, but until I have that firm in writing, it's concerning for me because this costs go up considerably.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Seth, but we have updated our septics in the past because we have several on site. As 110 acres, we have our north building, which we've updated in order to manage. And it's really because they're hitting their age, right? They're hitting over 30 years old.
Repairing them is much different than adding, which is an expansion.
So we're not,
So that would require, you're adding more, which it may require you to go to the state.
I see, because we're adding more individuals. I see. Understood.
And as I understand, that's right now currently with some other permitting through Colorado Department of Health and Environment. It's been 8 to 9 months. That's some other things.
Depends on something.
Very special for even just simpler air quality things. So I'm just curious.
Well, air quality is very different than the water.
But I know,
quality.
but it just seems like the whole system has been a lot of those permits I've heard have been delayed lately. So
I haven't heard on the wastewater
Wastewater,
side, but it does take time if you have, there's quite a bit.
Do we know how much time it'll take before we know the answer to this question? Does anyone have an idea?
I'm asking my operations staff just to see if we have an update.
Because I was wondering, I mean, because that's kind of then it kind of has to go with what I meant. Because I was gonna say maybe we could potentially make a motion to conditionally to move to approve this conditionally on that answer, because I don't want it to then, if we do it and then we don't hear for 8 months, have that money held up and when it could be spent in other ways, or if we think it's gonna take, a few weeks or something, then we can just wait until that and then continue to move forward, not hold it up longer.
I appreciate that. I'm thinking maybe we even table this for a month, not asking them to come back and present it again, but maybe just provide an update whether they got this information, because we should know in a month whether this is gonna take several months or what kind of permit. And then we can maybe, because if we conditionally approve it and then all of a sudden that it's gonna be another 200,000, if you say it could be quadrupled for that large, that pretty much, then I don't know if they can move forward unless they're gonna get that all done. And so like you said, so I'm wondering if we just table this vote for another month and see if they can get that answer to us, and then we would have more information. Because I think you're right, Mr. Chair, that's a big question that needs to be kind of answered. And then we can just, we won't ask them to come back and spend their time again. They could just maybe call in for questions or something, and then we wouldn't need the presentation, we just have that answer to that question. I know how you feel about that, just to kind of table that conversation, because let's say if we conditionally approve it and then I have to pull it back because, the
Right.
cost.
I was just trying to save on time, because maybe that's not gonna be an issue, so.
Well, and I it's the question, septic systems, improving septic systems, that kind of covered under the capital of the things for the money? I'm just curious about that. So that's another answer I'm wondering too, because just knowing that this state, because we had, when we've been on some of those calls, I talked to Jamie and then they had come back and said, they had said, hey, they looked through that and the federal folks had said, because of some other states who have done some questionable allocations, I hope that's a good way to put it, that they're being more scrutinizing of other things. And so far we have, that's why we got a couple extra questions on one of ours and we were able to say, but I just want to make sure this would be something that wouldn't have that extra scrutiny. It's not, just because we know that's been happening more. So I just want to make sure we kind of ask maybe those 2 questions before we move forward.
Sure. So to be clear, it'd be the one ensuring that from a permit standpoint, we're in the clear and that there's no problems there. Or that it's not going to quadruple our spend, making it not feasible for us. And 2, us answering the question of if the council can't fund the septic update, is it something that we're still planning to proceed with on our end with updating our septic system, regardless of that funding? Is that kind of the 2 questions there?
Yeah, I think also utility increase. I think both of those we need to ask if that's an acceptable use of the funds. I also think they may ask more about what's all entailed in the basement remodel and renovation, so we might need some more specifics there.
Sure.
Is this, those kind of things, is it just right now an unfinished basement, those kind of things? that I think we want to be very clear with the good. Because Commissioner's correct, it's gotten to a point where there's actually been a bill reduced in the US House to actually have more oversight of these dollars because of concerns of how the money is being spent. So we want to just make sure we do our due diligence.
Right, much rather,
Same with us.
I'd
Yeah,
rather,
sure.
rather proceed with caution and make sure we're doing due diligence than have to come back and.
Oh, yeah, far better to,
Have press like, hey,
yeah.
they built the toilet or the septic system. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's great work, but I think we should do this, just take a pause. So I'll make a motion that we table this vote and for a month until we get those questions answered and then be able to move forward or not move forward, depending on the answers.
Motion,
I'll second.
there's a second. Any further conversation? With making sure, Brian, trustee Mason, you got the opportunity to chime in here.
Nope, all good. And I do just wanted to say thank you, Kyle, for working with Brian and getting those numbers lined out. That way the council doesn't have to, make any crazy decisions about who gets what and that. So just appreciate your guys' collaboration there.
Yeah, our pleasure. Absolutely.
Thank you, trustee Mason. Any further conversation?
I'd just like to make sure that you guys know, we're just pausing this. We personally love the project, but in light of what's been brought up, is definitely something you need to do.
Yeah.
I have no intention of looking elsewhere to spend those funds until we have a clear answer.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm grateful that you all are making this decision. Far better to do it now than approve it and then 3 months later say, well, hold on, sorry, we need to reconsider and adjust things after we've spent some money. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
So did we vote?
Yes, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Thank you for your time and I
Thank you.
appreciate the conversation.
I'll make the motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Great. There's a second.
Only because we're over time and I'm trying to keep us in line with the state law.
We are over by 5 minutes, but we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for everyone's time. You're saving lives. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. For the timing is now testifying.
Oh,